Platform Engineering with Matthew Casperson.
The Azure DevOps Podcast is a show for developers and DevOps professionals shipping software using Microsoft technologies. Each show brings you hard-hitting interviews with industry experts, innovating better methods, and sharing success stories. Listen on to learn how to increase quality, ship quickly, and operate well. And now your host, Jeffrey Palermo.
Welcome to the show. I'm Jeffrey Palermo, your host for helping you and your teams move fast, to deliver quality, and to run your software with confidence in Azure, all while using everything that the .NET ecosystem has to offer. The podcast is sponsored by ClearMeasure, a full-service software architecture and engineering firm that empowers software projects for business-critical needs. And quick announcement, my architect forums are going strong. Signups for the next session are up. And if you lead a software team and are looking to collaborate with some of your peer architect leaders out there in the industry, then you can sign up at the link in the show notes. And we understand that there's lots of educational material out there for developers and all kinds of technologies. But for people who are leading developers, sometimes you might feel like you're on your own. So this forum is for that. And of course, for those of you who are looking for Programming with Palermo, my video podcast, you can just search for it in any of the directories and you'll be able to find it. Now, my guest today on the show is Matthew Casperson, and he has loved technology since his first Commodore 64, and that passion remains to this day. His days have him integrating enterprise platforms with Octopus, writing guides and books for platforms like Kubernetes, blogging and training his colleagues, testing bleeding edge open source projects, and contributing to various blogs. He's also a 5-star published author and has created solutions that Red Hat felt was worthy of being submitted for a patent, and CEOs have endorsed his development skills on LinkedIn. And although he calls himself a developer, he's quite comfortable administering Linux servers, for example, managing MySQL databases, deploying infrastructure with Ansible, reconfiguring firewalls, or just about doing anything that's necessary to get the job done. And to ensure that he's learning the industry's best practices, he pushes himself to gain certifications and technologies that he relies on. With Oracle proudly told him, you're among the elite top 1% of certified Java professionals who've gone on to achieve the Java Enterprise Architect certifications. Wow. So, Matthew, welcome to the show. How are you, sir?
Thank you. Yeah, very good. And excited to talk today. So thanks for having me on the show.
Oh, my pleasure. My pleasure. Glad to have you on. And you spend all of your time thinking about platform engineering. And because that's I want to get into that and I want to ask about that. And you're obviously in the Octopus Deploy organization. But before we get into that, what are some key events in your career that's kind of landed you in working on the things that you're working on today? What's some high points in your journey?
Yeah, so my career has actually been quite a varied one. I originally started out as a software engineer, did that for quite some time, and joined Octopus as a software engineer, initially working on the Octopus product itself. But in the last couple of years, I've moved between a few different teams. So I moved into marketing for about a year, spent some time as in a dev role, and now I've actually moved into the sales team as a solutions engineer. And it's really quite a blessing to be able to have that kind of mobility within a company. It's really opened my eyes to all the different aspects of what it takes to write and deliver and support software. But I think the solutions engineering role is perhaps the most interesting because you get to see both the technical side, but also spend quite a good chunk of your day talking to customers and just picking their brains and having them pick yours. And that's a whole breadth of experience that is, I think, really unique to those customer-facing roles.
Nice. Yeah, it's definitely a different thing from just getting things working yourself in an engineer role versus talking to customers who have no idea what the jargon is.
And they don't even like the jargon, I think, most of the time. There's always that little moment of camaraderie, I think, where you kind of admit to each other that we can get past the jargon now and just actually talk about what you want to achieve and how you want to achieve it, and we'll drop the buzzwords and the marketing speak and just get down to it. So I look, the people you talk to there, at the end of the day, they're just regular people. I think everyone likes to put on their best face for blogs and perhaps podcasts, but when you're in a one-on-one conversation with people, just as part of the sales process, you can really just have those honest conversations, which is nice.
Yeah. Well, there's some terms that are kind of getting around, and I wanted to kind of ask you, because you're in that space of explaining things to people. DevOps kind of came on the engineering conference scene in 2010 and was not really well known for a number of years. And now a lot of people talk about DevOps, right? And then I think it was the Puppet Labs survey last year that kind of had a question on there about platform engineering. And I've encountered this question a lot. I'm like, well, hold on. Okay, we're talking about DevOps, and I know automated deployments and CI/CD and cloud fits in here somewhere, maybe. But what is platform engineering? Is it the same? Is it different? What the heck is this new word, platform engineering?
Yeah, so it's something we've struggled with, I think. There's obviously a lot of overlap between a lot of these disciplines, DevOps, SRE, platform engineering. I mean, you're going to find a lot of commonality there but between all the disciplines. I think the approach that I've kind of taken, and this may be an unpopular one, but DevOps is very hard to talk about these days. And I think it's mostly because it's become so all-encompassing that it's almost unfalsifiable at this point. Like there's no role you can take in a company that is technically oriented that doesn't fall under DevOps. You have the DevOps life cycle, which is that kind of infinity symbol that talks about all the planning and testing and coding, deploying, releasing, supporting, operating, which is everything, right? So DevOps is it's really grown into being everything that goes into writing and releasing and supporting software. And then you have the DORA report that I think has recently included cultural foundations. How well do you work as a team? Is a blameless culture? Is there a lot of are people inquisitive and free to explore? And so not only is it all the technical aspects that go into DevOps, but it's also the building and relationships within teams. And I mean, at the end of the day, then it's almost impossible to point to any particular job and say that's not DevOps anymore. It's kind of just become a catch-all term that becomes very hard to talk about more generally. But I think with platform engineering, then it's more of a specific subset of tasks that a team will take as part of DevOps. So they're mostly they're going to be focused on the developer experience. So you take a look at like a company like Amazon, for example. I think it was earlier this year or perhaps last year, there was a post on Insider that talked about the Amazon CEO building the Amazon software builder experience. And that was really the driving force behind that was a lot of the metrics that they were gathering from their internal engineering teams that said, 30% of your time is spent just on repetitive tasks, or, a third of engineers are spending 8 hours a week just on undifferentiated tasks. And so, I mean, you kind of expect a company like Amazon to be fairly well versed in practices like DevOps and site reliability. But there's clearly this gap that is still manifesting in these teams that results in engineers doing a lot of boring and unsatisfying work. And although this builder experience team doesn't talk about itself as being platform engineering, I mean, when you actually look into the kind of the tenets and what they're trying to achieve, it's they're very well aligned. And so the platform team is really focused on what is the experience of being an engineer and part of this company. How do we remove some of the drudgery and the points of frustration in that process? And I think that's a big difference from most of the other kind of paradigms or specialties that you see in DevOps, where they're more focused on the systems, like the things they're measuring are latency, uptime, outage windows, time to deploy, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas your platform team is going to be more focused on measuring the experience of the developers. Like, are you happy with what you do? Is the work that you do, are you contributing to meaningful work, or are you just doing these repetitive tasks? So I think that's probably the big difference there, is that it's your platform team is more looking inward and trying to make or scale up the team members as opposed to scaling up the technology.
Okay. Now, we trace DevOps back to a conference in Europe around 2010, and there's like you said, the graphic for DevOps. When we talk about DevOps pipelines, where there's some concrete things, there's builds, there's testing, there's packaging a release candidate, there's deploying, there's the monitoring. And is there a known set of practices that fall within this new term platform engineering, or a text or an origin we can point to and say, yes, that's the definition?
Yeah, so I think platform engineering today is kind of where something like GitOps was a couple of years ago. So you can trace GitOps back to, I think, a blog post by Weaveworks, I believe, where they talked about the process of operations by pull request.
Mm-hmm.
But the definition of something like GitOps has obviously evolved over the years to incorporate more fixed principles or processes that people should adopt. And I think platform engineering is kind of today where GitOps was a couple of years ago. Like, people have a general sense of what it should be, and maybe understand the things they should be measuring, or what success looks like. But I don't think there is actually a fixed set of processes that anyone has really settled on.
Mm-hmm.
Certainly, it's challenging for us to talk about platform engineering because there's not a lot of the terminology is not consistent. Most people aren't speaking about platform engineering using the same terms or understanding it in the same context. So it's a very fluid field. I think we'll see a lot of interpretations, I think, coming out of it. But yeah, in terms of is there a flow chart you can follow today to do platform engineering? The answer is no, probably not. It is quite a young field, and people embarking on it today will be the pioneers.
Okay. So just like early in the DevOps world, it was people talking about a set of capabilities, and certainly automated deployments was core in that. And that's why, people think of Octopus Deploy as, hey, this is a DevOps tool because it's part of the process. I haven't seen, if you have you seen, we have DevOps engineers now. Have you seen any of the job boards coming out with, we need to hire a platform engineering director or platform engineering analyst or whatever the terms would be?
Yeah, so Amazon's obviously a good example. If you go and search their job site for ASBX, you'll probably find half a dozen roles that they're specifically hiring in this kind of field. And we're certainly talking to a lot of platform teams just as part of the sales process with Octopus. So there's definitely, I think, an understanding that this paradigm or this focus is important, and important enough to be funded with actual jobs and job titles. But I think the challenge is that a lot of people have been, maybe just like you could hire a DevOps engineer without ever really knowing what that person's supposed to do. I suspect you can also hire a lot of platform teams without quite understanding what change they're supposed to be making. But in terms of actual teams, like well-formed and funded teams, they're definitely out there.
Okay. So how does this influence your work at Octopus? What does your kind of day-to-day or week look like in your role at Octopus Deploy?
Yeah, so in terms of the platform engineering aspect, I mean, honestly, a lot of it is just trying to coalesce or get everyone to agree on what that actually means and what it actually looks like in practice. I mean, internally, we kind of do a lot of these practices ourselves. We just didn't call it platform engineering.
Mm-hmm.
So the solutions engineering team, we do a lot of demos to a lot of different customers, and the nature of a tool like Octopus is that we integrate with every cloud provider and dozens of operating systems and programming languages and whatever. So these demos are fairly complex, and they can take a lot of time to build anything that looks convincing and targets the actual technology stack of a potential customer.
Right.
And so internally in our team, we kind of built out this platform that allowed our solutions engineers to grab templates of fully formed deployment processes and then customize them slightly and show them off as a demo. We weren't using the term platform engineering, but when you start, looking at what we were trying to achieve with that process, it turns out actually this is right in the wheelhouse of platform engineering. And so we began to wonder, what does this look like if we started to automate it and productize it? How do we take this kind of bespoke thing that we built internally and give it to our customers? And so there's this twofold aspect of what even is platform engineering. Sounds simple, but it's quite a nuanced answer. And then once we get past that, what does it actually look like? How do we guide customers into creating useful solutions in their own teams? And I think answering those two questions takes up the bulk of my day these days.
Many thanks to our podcast sponsor, ClearMeasure. ClearMeasure is a software architecture company that empowers clients' development teams to be self-sufficient, moving fast, delivering quality, and running their systems with confidence. Whether starting a new project or developing new technologies or techniques, ClearMeasure sets up your team to deliver world-class results. Learn more at www.clearmeasure.com. ClearMeasure, empowering software delivery. ClearMeasure is also happy to be a sponsor of the video podcast, Programming with Palermo. Watch, learn, and program alongside Chief Architect Jeffrey Palermo. Videos are added weekly and available on syndicated locations supporting video podcast or by visiting palermo.network. Tune in today.
What aspect of it do you think you have figured out at this point?
Yeah, so I think what we've figured out is that it goes back to your first question, like what's the difference between platform engineering and DevOps or something like SRE?
Mm-hmm.
And I think the thing that we've settled on, it's a couple of analogies that help people understand why platform engineering is important. And the simple analogy here is how do you build like a very nice PowerPoint presentation? So I'm not a graphic artist by any means. I'm quite terrible at drawing. If you ask me to build a really good PowerPoint, I could spend a week on it trying to tweak, online templates or build something myself. And it'll still look kind of terrible, right? But it's been a whole week of my time. Whereas if you got a designer to build a template PowerPoint presentation, I could copy that in 20 seconds and be building straight away.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's this order of magnitude of, efficiency that you get from just being able to select a previously designed template or, something that captures the best practice.
Mm-hmm.
And that same idea really applies to your entire engineering team. If there's always going to be edge cases, but a lot of the time you really just want to be able to give your team that opinionated golden path that they can copy and paste and just save themselves an entire week of trying to work it out themselves. And so there's actually a very nice quote or definition of architecture that I lean on a lot. It comes from a fairly old book on designing with UML. I can't remember the exact title, but the quote goes something like, architecture is the set of decisions that you make about a system that keep people from exercising needless creativity. And it was that phrase of needless creativity that really stuck with me, because there's nothing more needlessly creative than solving an already solved problem.
Yeah,
and I think that's what platform engineering is really all about, is just giving people the freedom to solve novel problems instead of resolving the problem of how do I deploy a container to Kubernetes or something. So I think we have a fairly good idea now of how we like to describe platform engineering to people. I mean, the next question then is, how do you measure the success? And I think like teams like Spotify have a really good model where they say, how long does it take a new engineer to commit their 10th PR?
Mm-hmm.
And that's like a metric that they can use to gauge how quickly people can get up and running. And that, again, is this distinction between something like platform engineering and, say, SRE, whereas an SRE is more interested in how well a system performs, or how often it goes out. Your platform team is really interested in that people number of how quickly can I get people up and running, how productive can they be, and how satisfied do they feel. So that's it sounds like a fairly simple first step of just defining what it even means, but that's it's been a surprising challenge internally, and we're still refining the message, but I think we've gotten that idea down pat. But the next really big challenge is, great, what does that actually look like in my company, right? How do I roll this out? What are the steps I need to take? And that's something we're working through now with some. We'll have some webinars and hopefully even publish even a blog series or a book that will give people a guideline that they can use to get platform engineering established in their own teams.
So it would sound like this concept goes beyond what I normally think of as DevOps, and even into software engineering, and then even into, like you mentioned, the SRE space, or site reliability engineering, the monitoring space, or in other words, is it anything that a software team has to do a good job that is a solved problem, to make sure that they're not having to invent a solution, and that they know that everybody knows what the set of solved problems are?
Yeah, so that's a pretty good summation, I think, is having a set of solutions, and then making sure that everyone knows that they exist and can actually consume them quite easily. I think as you look a bit forward beyond that, there is the notion that platform engineering should be largely self-service. A successful team is one that provides a solution that engineers want to actually use, not one that they've been told to use by the managers.
Mm-hmm.
And a big part of that is how do you consume their feedback? Like they'll have suggestions, they'll make changes. How do you keep that feedback cycle going? So it's not obviously initially you have to provide some sort of solution, but there is that ongoing aspect of keeping everything up to date and making sure that the solution you provide actually solves the problem, right? Not just the problem that you thought you were solving.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess the third part of that the summary that you gave there would be the feedback and continuous improvement part of it.
Yeah, I'm even thinking about notions like, how do I have a non-interactive worker process just sitting there and doing work? Just sitting there and watching a queue, or just waiting for something. Yeah. I mean, we long before I started, 40, 50 years ago, there needed to be these offline workers that just sat there and did stuff. And the technologies move forward, libraries and frameworks, but there's patterns around there besides the libraries and whatnot that kind of keep on moving. There's kind of patterns around that are solved problems, but our education system and our companies are not really good at educating incoming developers who've maybe never done an offline job like that. Maybe they started out doing web development. And so the first time they need something that has no UI, that just sits there and does stuff, it's like, how do I get this thing to like stay running? How do I get this thing to, if there's an error, not completely crash until somebody manually restarts it? What are my options for even deploying it somewhere? And just all those different things that they are solved problems, but who knows?
Yeah, that's exactly right. I think one of the sayings we have is that developers have a $0 budget, but an unlimited time budget. So if you gave that problem to someone, they'd happily spend a month just working away on it. Right? That's actually their jam. They'd be quite happy to do it. It's not going to be the most efficient use of a month of someone's time, but just the nature of engineering is people love to solve problems. So you give them a problem, and they'll take as long as they need to solve it. But if you just had a catalog of sample applications or project templates that you could download, suddenly this is it goes from a month-long project to probably a couple of days. And I think having that internal repository of best practices or sample projects that people know exists, that they trust is well maintained, and that they can contribute back to is definitely going to add value to your teams.
Yeah, there's so many of those things. And when developer goes to Visual Studio and does file new project on something fresh, we don't get asked, hey, what are you building? We get asked, what user interface framework would you like to visualize today? Right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's the leading question. So how is this going to be productized? What are the feasible options here?
So look, I mean, platform engineering is really a sliding scale of solutions. Could be as simple as a wiki page, right?
Okay.
You jump onto something like Amazon and Google, template CloudFormation modules. You'll just get a docs page that has a table of a list to Git repos. Arguably, that's platform engineering, some form of it anyway. Someone's built a template that gets people started and saves them from having to reinvent the wheel. But I think as we move forward, though, it's I think teams are really looking for that integrated experience where they can build the samples, publish them internally, have people push them out to their customers or have their internal team members consume them as needed, but then also monitor them, right? So what changes did the end users make? Are they interesting changes? Should I be using them? Who's using my templates? I should go and schedule a conversation with them just to see how they're going. And so I think the end productized version of this is very much treating the thing that you used to build as a one-off as a product in and of itself, and it's a product that you distribute internally, but then you also have to surround that product with all the business process that you'd find in any other commercial product, right? Like, who supports this? What happens when it needs to be updated? How do I get feedback? Is it a thumbs up or a thumbs down? Things like that. And so a lot of those business processes that you find outside of a product, I think are going to start moving into the product itself as the thing that you normally build, be it an application or a pipeline, a deployment pipeline, something like that. That goes from being just something you run to actually something you distribute as a product internally.
And it seems like to realize this vision, it would force everyone involved to publish a template to actually take seriously dependency management and factoring out interfaces versus core logic. And so many samples out there. Yeah, there's a code sample out there, but you see a line of UI code right next to a line of Entity Framework code, right next to a line that calls out, to some web service. And so there's so much commonality or combinations of, well, you could talk over a web service. You could deploy this in AWS and Azure. You could have this UI, that UI, that if you approached it trying to satisfy all the different common stuff, you have a million combinations. So, but then to externalize all the variables of environment, it forces you to do architecture, which Does our industry teach that very well?
No. Yeah, and so I mean, from a code point of view, obviously, like we've struggled with having demos that will span from a AWS Lambda to a Kubernetes pod to a an IIS service.
Yeah,
and so that's forced us internally to. I mean, we're just writing sample applications, but even architecting those to be able to demonstrate on all these different platforms. Yeah, it does what you said, right? You really have to think about where those lines have to be drawn, and which parts you split up.
It's not a different concept, but because it's going to be deployed in a different environment, you have to have like a different code sample.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
but it's the same thing.
It's interesting that you brought up the idea of dependencies as well, because I mean, even in the deployment space, your DevOps teams are having to take things like dependencies seriously. So I just read there's a Cyber Resiliency Act. It's either being planned. I'm not sure it's in effect yet. It might still be still being discussed. But one of their requirements is if you build software, you have to distribute a software bill of materials with it as well.
Okay.
And I think there's an executive order for US government agencies to also consider the availability of SBOMs in any software they buy. So yeah, suddenly, these deployment pipelines that used to just be, I mean, you did your best, but as long as they worked, no one really cared.
Yeah.
Suddenly you actually have like quite heavy legislation now impacting these pipelines. And you can imagine how hard that is to push out even just it sounds like a simple change, but making that change across 100 pipelines suddenly is a
regulated
some of that
activity,
undifferentiated work that engineers hate. And so it's a good opportunity here to kind of standardize and automate some of those internal processes through platform engineering.
Right. It's a good idea on the face of it, because everybody should kind of have an inventory of all of the tools, libraries, frameworks that have been pulled in to make a piece of software a thing. And it's but in reality, so many people or so many members of development teams tend to have the ability to add a new library, add a new tool with no discussions whatsoever. That a lot of teams end up in a space where someone asks the question, hey, what outside tools are we using? Whether it be commercial, open source, whatever. And it's hard to answer that question.
Yeah. And you get away with it too until the next Log4j, right?
Yeah, right. I mean, one of those libraries has a 0-day vulnerability that ends up with an easy exploit. Or somebody hacks a package manager or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, we have a few Java applications internally, but we're mostly a .NET shop ourselves. But yeah, even when Log4j came around, I think it tied up quite a few people for a number of days, just running around, cataloging what apps we did build and what dependencies they had. I mean, that's thousands of dollars of just wasted time where ideally you just you type Log4j in a search box somewhere and you get all the hits that you need.
Yeah. Well, we point to Log4j, or we point to that, forgot the name of that string library in the NPM package library that someone someone modified, and then all these other libraries use that string library. And so anybody that did kind of any significant JavaScript whatsoever, which tons of .NET teams, add in React or Angular or Vue and they're using the whole NPM ecosystem. And so one little common library. And so it's happened, it's happened in two other platforms. It's going to happen in NuGet. It's only a matter of time. I mean, somebody with a popular library, their credentials get compromised, and then somebody else puts out like a labeled minor patch release with a little bit of change. Like, boom, that's all it takes.
Yeah, that's right. It is a matter of time, right? We're not getting less complex with less dependencies. So, teams have to assume now that, this is a yearly thing, if not more frequently.
Yeah. Well, and Dependabot is so valuable in doing that. But really just knowing what you're using And I hate the version greater than or equal configuration when you're declaring what your dependencies are, because it leaves the door wide open to, a change that, well, shoot, we didn't plan for. I didn't intend to upgrade that library. I decided to use. I mean, if a new library is out, that's fantastic. We can upgrade it. But just to have your build system, every time it builds, it's almost like it's this unregulated committer off to the side that's pulling in these dot revisions without any kind of oversight. And that's the surface area. Sorry, that's my soapbox.
No, I get it. Like, teams agonize over pull requests of all their internal trusted employees, but actually 90% of the code is open source libraries, just with people committing to main because that's what they do.
Right.
It's just two different worlds between the text you can see in code and the library that you pull in that's hidden.
Yeah. Well, I love this concept that you guys are working on at Octopus about taking already solved problems and having a way to make them available to anyone. If any of the listeners, if it just really piques their attention, is there anything to get involved with at the moment, or is that kind of still pending?
Yeah, so we do have a blog series. It's called Enterprise Patterns.
Mm-hmm.
I don't actually have a convenient link, but I guess we can put one on the accompanying.
Yeah, we'll add that to the show notes.
Yeah, but yeah, so that captures a lot of our thinking, and we'd actually have an internal. We call it a reference implementation. It's really just this kind of big Docker Compose stack that we use to build and test these ideas. And if anyone has any feedback, we do have issues in GitHub that people can reach out to. Or they can just download these projects and try them for themselves.
Awesome. We'll include those links in the show notes as well. Fantastic. Well, this is a great topic, and I'm glad we're at the kind of the forefront of industry adoption, because you're right. It's a big problem, and our industry is only getting bigger, and developers are stretched and asked to do more and more all the time.
Yeah, 100%. So this is not going away. It's definitely not going to be a fad. We'll see more of this in the future.
Right. And regardless of what term of jargon ends up being popular around the entire industry where everybody knows what it is, this problem is like, it's concrete.
Yeah, whatever, however you describe it, everyone intrinsically understands the problem, regardless of the terms.
For sure. Well, Matthew, thanks so much for coming on the show and sharing what you're working on in regards to platform engineering. I appreciate it.
Oh, thank you. It was a good opportunity to talk about it.
My pleasure. My pleasure. And until next time, keep shipping.
You've been listening to the Azure DevOps Podcast, a show for developers and DevOps professionals shipping software using Microsoft technologies. Go to www.azuredevops.show for show notes and other episodes. On behalf of your host, Jeffrey Palermo, and our sponsors, thanks for listening, and may God bless you.